The recent Desert Storm conflict demonstrated the dangers of missiles like the Scud. A single Scud missile accounted for more American deaths than any other single incident in the war. In addition, the Iraqi Scud attacks on Israel were a political threat which could have totally changed the Middle East. Although designed to destroy airplanes, the use of the Patriot missile system in Israel and Saudi Arabia proved the feasibility of shooting missiles out of the sky before they reached their target. Scud-like missiles are now spreading around the world, with dozens of countries developing or purchasing them. They can carry nuclear, chemical, or biological warheads hundreds of miles. They are a cheap and easy way for almost any nation to strike an adversary. Recognizing the danger to the U.S. forces, friends, and allies in overseas locations, Congress has called for the development of a defense against these missiles. Currently, the Department of Defense is developing missiles such as an improved Patriot, an extended-range interceptor, to meet this requirement. Some of these new interceptor missiles are already being tested at White Sands Missile Range. However, these flights only test the missile's ability to hit incoming targets which have flown a short distance. To fully test these new missiles, it will be necessary to fly targets from longer distances, at greater speeds, and from higher altitudes. The only way to accomplish this is to launch the targets from realistic distances of several hundred miles. White Sands Missile Range and 3 other military ranges are being considered for this extended distance testing. If White Sands is selected as a test site, launches of targets from Fort Wingate, New Mexico, and Green River, Utah, are proposed. The new interceptors, like improved Patriot, would be launched from the missile range or Fort Bliss and kill the targets over White Sands. All debris from the intercepts would land on military property. White Sands is the only all-over land option and offers the ability to recover missile and target debris after the test. Such testing is not new to White Sands. Since it began in 1945, the missile range has fired more than 43,000 rockets and missiles. Included in that number are hundreds of firings from Fort Wingate and various Utah locations in the 1960s and early 70s. During that time, White Sands safely fired Athena, Pershing, and Hound Dog missiles down the currently proposed corridor to the missile range. An important aspect of thousands of missile firings by White Sands is the fact that there has never been an injury to the general public as a result of this testing. Now, as in the past, White Sands continues its perfect safety record through intense preparation, using state-of-the-art technology and taking prudent precautions. For the proposed shots, it will be possible to monitor every aspect of the missile's flight to ensure a safe mission. If target launches take place from Fort Wingate or Green River, based on past experience, a basic mission would require the following. A safety area will be established around the target launcher, which would be evacuated. If any of this safety area goes beyond military-controlled land, contracts or agreements will be negotiated with landowners and responsible agencies to accomplish the evacuations. Another safety evacuation area will have to be developed for any of the flights using a booster, which would drop off in flight. Like the launch area, this booster drop zone will be defined to avoid sensitive environmental areas. Again, landowners and agencies will be identified so negotiations can be started for the appropriate contracts and agreements. In most cases, this evacuation area will be only a few miles in diameter. The actual evacuations could last as long as 12 hours, but in most cases will be hours shorter. As compensation to private landowners, they will be paid mileage to the nearest town and government per diem for the day. For users of public lands in the evacuation areas, every attempt will be made to alert them before an upcoming firing. This will mean placing notices well in advance with the local news media, information centers, recreational businesses, restaurants, public land agencies, post offices, roads entering the area, trailheads, and other high-use areas. This may seem like a daunting task, but since 1960, the missile range has routinely evacuated families from private and public lands that border White Sands. Through the voluntary cooperation of these families, the missile range is usually able to notify the inhabitants, confirm evacuations, and conduct the test very quickly. Families are then notified via local radio stations when they can return to their homes, usually well before the end of the 12-hour evacuation. Many things would happen in a typical target launch from off-range to White Sands. The various components of the missile will be taken to the launch area and assembled. Notices of the impending launch will be spread through the local area. White Sands will move a variety of tracking and safety equipment to the launch site in order to conduct a safe test. Using radar and other tracking devices, the target missile will be tracked as soon as it leaves the ground. Controllers will be able to monitor the target's flight and its health every second. After firing for about a minute, the first stage booster completes its burn and drops off the vehicle. The second stage then fires. This burn will carry the second stage and the fake warhead to White Sands. Part of the test at White Sands will be to determine if these new interceptor systems can distinguish between a harmless booster and the warhead. As the target flies to White Sands, the interceptor's radar system, which is also being tested, will provide data for the interceptor missile only. Range radar and instrumentation will be used for all safety purposes. Once over the missile range, the interceptor will be launched to kill the target. If it misses, the flight of both vehicles will be terminated over White Sands. Meanwhile, the first stage booster will come back to the ground in the evacuated booster zone about 8 to 10 minutes after launch. To assure an immediate response to any hazards caused by the booster falling, such as a fire, a helicopter will be poised at the edge of the evacuation zone. Since the drop zone is so small, the helicopter crew may actually see the booster impact. If not, the booster's homing beacon will guide the crew to the impact site within minutes. The helicopter will land close to the booster, and a small recovery crew will immediately check the site. If there is a fire, they will have the equipment to respond. If more help is needed, the helicopter can be used to radio for more personnel waiting at the edge of the booster drop zone. An explosives expert will check to ensure the booster is safe before recovery will actually start. At this time, the location and condition of the booster will be radioed to local officials so roadblocks can be lifted and families can return to their homes. An unintrusive method of removing the booster would be to cut it in two so a helicopter can airlift it to the nearest road. One fast way of cutting the booster is to detonate a small, precise ring of explosives placed around it. The cut is clean and produces no debris. Also, a gasoline-powered saw can be used. Both methods neatly cut the booster in half and cause little, if any, environmental damage. Depending upon the location of the spent booster, one method may be preferred over the other for each booster drop. Cutting the booster in half normally takes a few minutes, and the helicopter can immediately lift it out to the nearest road for the ground crew. If the booster drops in an area where an agency or landowner objects to the use of a helicopter in recovery, other methods can be used. For instance, the missile range has used horses and mules to remove debris from White Sands National Monument. Afterwards, the recovery crew will remove all small debris, fill in any holes, rake the area, and seed the soil as directed by the landowner or controlling agency. If there is any damage to livestock or private property because of Army activity in these areas, White Sands personnel will assist the landowners in filing a claim for reimbursement. In the end, if White Sands Missile Range fires missiles from off-range locations, White Sands will use its 48 years of experience and the input of local residents to ensure all tests are conducted safely. In review, White Sands will establish safety evacuation zones to protect residents and other users from known hazards. Residents and users will be given as much preliminary notice as possible. White Sands will have immediate response within 15 minutes of impact in booster drop areas. White Sands will work with landowners to minimize impacts and also be responsible for any damage caused by Army activities.